I pushed the
Evelyn,
glass door and
I
the room
request a
froze
private
around me.
recess. Step
Marcus
outside.
Vale standing by the
Of course,
table with his
Marcus.
hand on a folder that had my name on the tab. Suspicion tightened my jaw before I had finished walking
I will
in.
not be a
I
shield,
tasted the
Marcus.
office coffee on
Do
my
you
tongue
understand?
and felt the worn leather of my messenger bag dig into my shoulder. Evelyn was already at the desk, her folder open, eyes steady in a way that said she had been waiting
You
for
knew
me.
exactly what you were
Marcus
doing.
did
That's a
not move to
baseless
greet me.
accusation, Marcus.
He let the folder sit
Enough.
between us like a charge.
The evidence
I did
speaks
not
for
plan to
itself.
come back. I had left the building 2 days earlier with my badge in my pocket and no exit interview. I wanted a clean break. I wanted no spectacle. I had hoped absence would close the door I wouldn't cross again. Now a folder with my name was on a table under corporate light, and that plan was unmade. Suspicion was the reason I had stayed away, and suspicion now made every detail feel like evidence. Evelyn tapped a pen twice and then pushed the stack toward me. "Alex," she said, "we need to talk about why you walked out without an interview." Her voice was level. She folded her hands on the desk as if centering a map. I kept my hands in my pockets. I felt a slow hardness behind my ribs. "I already left, Evelyn," I said. "I don't want anything that drags questions back in." My words were short and measured. Marcus glanced up then, slow as a man who only moves when he intends it. "Marcus disagrees. Evelyn, we reclassified your departure pending an investigation. The paperwork is here." She pushed a neat stack of formal pages toward me. "You can give a statement now, or we'll open the inquiry." Marcus's hand skimmed the folder like a threat of contact. He set a single settlement agreement on top, heavy paper with his signature line already filled. "Sign this, Alex, and the company closes this matter." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His presence was a weight. The first shift came as anger shaped itself in my shoulders. I unfastened my messenger bag and let it fall to the chair. "You were asking me to sign away everything," I said. My voice had an edge. I looked at Marcus and then at Evelyn. "Why is the company reclassifying my resignation as an investigation?" Evelyn's gaze did not flicker. "Because when you left suddenly, we received complaints tied to your team." Standard procedure. She slid a redacted cover memo across the table. "I need the truth, Alex. You did not answer my call." I opened the folder. The papers were neat, corporate, stamped and bland until a smaller envelope fell out. A photo slid from it and hit the table. My name on the tab felt heavier. The photograph showed an email header I recognized, a timestamp 5 months ago, and a signature I did not expect. The signature belonged to Marcus. My hand went to my throat without meaning to. The second emotion shift, fear, arrived not as a suffocating fog but as the sudden awareness of the reach Marcus had. If that email was what it looked like, then he had already put his pen under problems he wanted buried. I looked at Marcus. His face was a mask of calm that did not hide the way his jaw tightened. "This photo is a copy of a memo," I said, pointing at Marcus's signature. "Why is his name on this?" Marcus folded his hands in the steeple he favored. "Sign the agreement, Alex. You will get a severance. Walk away with your dignity." He the last 2 words slowly, as if testing whether they would stick. Evelyn pushed the photo back toward me. "There are redactions in the memo. I reviewed these files because complaints mentioned practices in your group. We are trying to reconcile what happened and why you left in the way you did." Her fingers brushed the paper, as if checking its edge. "We want your account." She waited. I thought of the team. I thought of the late nights I spent reformatting data to cover gaps, of the way a directive from Marcus's office had rerouted an audit file months earlier. I had tried to walk away without naming names because I had wanted no drama. I had wanted to protect my family and my quiet life. The suspicion that had kept me away now felt like a choice I could no longer make. I breathed and began to speak. "Marcus, the audit file was directed to skip a compliance checkpoint." I pushed back and got silenced. "You know that." My voice was flat. I put 2 short sentences between each name like stepping stones. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "That is not how I remember it." Evelyn placed a hand on the folder and tilted it so the papers caught the light. "We found other notes," she said, "not all of them signed by one hand. Some show a pattern." "Alex, did you document your concerns?" I hesitated, my fingers curled around a page. The memory that rose was specific and concrete. The morning I copied the email into a secure folder and hid the file behind a seemingly empty drive. The afternoon a manager laughed at my concern and told me to stop complicating things. The last night, when my chest tightened and I walked out of the building with my badge in my pocket. I did not describe the feelings in big words. I described actions. I archived an email, I left my office light on, I dropped my badge into the bottom of my messenger bag, I documented it. I said I kept a copy. I left because I couldn't stand the way it was handled. I didn't want to drag anyone into a fight. Marcus's lips thinned, then hand it over. If you want to make claims, make them through proper channels. He tapped the settlement agreement with a fingernail, or sign this and move on. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Marcus and then to me. The room held a small, sharp quiet. She stood and closed the door between the room and the corridor. The action tightened the scene. That photograph came from internal files, she said in a lower voice. Someone flagged it. I pulled it. I thought you should see it first, Alex. Marcus did not move from his spot near the table. His presence suggested the power to tilt a room's balance. He watched me as if waiting to see whether I would keep my plan to avoid noise or trade silence for a fight. I felt the third emotion shift, resolve, arrive as a practical muscle in my back. I had gone into exile to keep my life safe. Standing in that glass room, I realized silence would not protect anyone if the pattern continued. Evelyn, I said, show me the memo. Show me everything you have. She passed the redacted packet across the table. The paper crackled when I took it. My fingers were steady now. I spread the pages and found what had been tucked between them. A time-stamped internal memo that matched the photo's header, and beneath it, on a page with a corner folded, a handwritten note that used the same shorthand phrase managers used when redirecting compliance checks. The phrase matched a log entry I remembered making. I traced the letters with a thumb. This has Marcus's sign off. I said he authorized the rewrote. My voice did not raise. But there was a lean in it that made Marcus look away. Marcus's jaw worked. He cleared his throat. If you claim that, then you must be prepared to back it up. I slid the folded photograph and the memo back across and looked directly at him. I used his name. Marcus, you signed this. Either you explain why you signed it, or we show what you did to the board. There was a pause long enough for me to count. The air in the glass room did not change. People changed it with their choices. Marcus stepped forward and reached for the packet. His fingers closed over the top sheet. He had not raised his voice, but his motion was abrupt. His hand moved as if to remove evidence. Evelyn's pen stopped on the desk. I reacted before my brain finished ordering me. I pushed the chair out with both hands. Marcus's other hand tightened on the edge of the table. He moved to seize the packet. My fingers closed on the corner of the page as he pulled. Paper tore at the fold. The sound was small and high in the ears. Let go, Evelyn. Her voice was quiet and immediate. She stood and planted herself between Marcus and the table. Marcus, stop. She placed her portfolio in front of her like a barrier. Marcus's eyes locked on hers. Evelyn, you were intervening, he said. His tone carried both surprise and command. Marcus, return the documents now, she said. This room is under her protocol. You will not remove evidence. The confrontation flared. The argument that followed was a quick exchange of short lines, each snapping back and forth. Marcus, don't. Evelyn, you can't. Marcus began. Marcus, hands off the file. Evelyn, you are overreaching. Marcus, you are the one under review if those signatures tie back to a directive. Evelyn answered. Alex, step back. Marcus, stop, I said. 3 staff from security appeared at the hard doorway like a machine responding to a signal. One of them stepped in as Marcus looked toward the glass wall. The glass reflected Marcus's profile and the small rip in the torn page. Marcus let go only when he saw the security guard's hand near his radio. Evelyn took a breath and then did something measured. She crossed to the console, hit a key, and a notification lit on a small display. Compliance hold enacted, she said. Marcus's access is restricted until we complete a review. Security will escort items into evidence. She folded the torn page, placed it in an evidence envelope, and slid it across to Alex with her pen balanced on top. My hands trembled for a moment as I took the envelope. The trimmer was mechanical, my knuckles tightened, my jaw clenched. Fear had hit earlier when I saw Marcus's signature. Now the fear moved again as adrenaline. I felt my chest beat faster. I used the trimmer to focus. I folded my hands the way my mother once taught me to steady them when I needed to speak. Evelyn, I said, what happens now? She sat back down and pushed a folder toward Marcus and me. We record statements. We secure records. We give you a protected channel to file your exit interview. We will not force you to sign anything while this is open. Marcus shifted his weight. His voice was lower when he spoke. This is premature. Evelyn. We should not air internal matters in this manner. He met me with a direct look. Alex, you can come forward privately. You can help us resolve this quietly. I looked at him and then at Evelyn. The fourth emotion shift, cautious trust, came not from comfort but from the sight of Evelyn taking specific actions. She had put Marcus's access on hold, called security, and begun documenting the torn page. Those procedures were concrete steps. They signaled that someone inside the company was willing to treat whatever I had as more than noise. I'll give a statement, I said. I'll do the exit interview. But I will not sign anything that erases facts. Not without seeing what you have and not without a channel that protects my notes. Evelyn nodded and tapped her pen twice. Marcus stared at the table, lips a thin line. Fine, he said finally, but the company expects discretion. Marcus, Evelyn, slow and precise. Discretion does not mean hiding wrongdoing. Her words landed in the air with the weight of policy. Marcus's fingers drummed the table once. Security took a photograph of the torn page. A guard asked my name and badge number, and then typed them into a handheld device. The device beeped and printed a small receipt that the guard handed to me. This documents chain of custody, the guard said. He was brief and unsentimental. Those small procedural actions shifted the story's shape. Each printed note, each logged keystroke made the conflict move from private worry to documented problem. I felt the risk change. The danger was not only what Marcus might do in the moment, but what might happen at the board level if the memo traced up the chain. The thought was a concrete engine for my next choice. I put the envelope under my arm and stood. The room's glass walls showed the empty corridor beyond. I gathered my messenger bag and my badge from the chair. My hands were steady now. I met Evelyn's eyes. When can I come back to give the full account? I asked. Evelyn tapped her portfolio twice and flipped to a calendar printed on her desk. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Find me here. Bring any copies you have. We'll open the protected channel. Marcus's voice stopped me as I moved to the door. Alex, he said, consider your options. Signing now protects you financially. Going public risks your career. His tone was cautious and thinly civil. I paused with a hand on the glass. I heard the elevator hum 2 floors down. I remembered the reason I had avoided all of this had been practical. My son at home, my mortgage, the small steady life I had built after years of quiet work. Those were concrete stakes, not abstractions. I set my jaw. Marcus, I said quietly, my options are already made. I will tell the truth. If that costs me, I'll live with it. But I won't sign to erase it. My sentence was short. Marcus's expression did not change, but I saw his fingers flex. Evelyn closed her portfolio and stood. Alex, we will secure your channel and document everything. If you change your mind about signing under duress, let me know. If anyone tries to intimidate you, tell security. I nodded and felt a small, steady relief that came from placing a chain of concrete actions in motion. The fifth emotion, shift, determination, settled like a tool in my hand. I had left to keep things simple. Now I would return because the facts mattered more than my quiet. In the corridor and under the humming lights, I walked out with copies of the evidence tucked under my arm. The torn page was in an envelope. Security printed a receipt with my name. Evelyn's voice followed me as I reached the elevator. Alex, she said, be safe. Come at 9 tomorrow. Her words were practical instructions, not consolation. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors began to close. I looked one last time through the glass into the room. Marcus stood in the reflected light, his shoulders steady, the settlement agreement still folded on the table. The torn paper's corner showed between his custody and mine. The doors closed on the hallway and I had a clear, quiet decision. I would return and give the exit interview I had refused. I would state the facts I had kept folded in a messenger bag for months. The elevator chimed and began to descend. The chapter ends with the elevator doors shutting on my face and the envelope under my arm, a small, concrete package that would force answers when I came back at 9 a.m. A security guard pressed his palm to my forearm and said, Mercer, there's someone to see you. He handed me a sealed folder and did not move until I looked down at the company logo stamped on the tab. Suspicion tightened my mouth before I reached for the leather strap of my messenger bag. I felt the folder's weight as if it might change whatever plan I had to walk away. I had left my desk ready to exit without an interview. I had planned a quiet end. Now a late evening garage, cold concrete, and a fluorescent light became a stage for the company to refuse that plan. I said, "This is private." I was leaving, my voice was flat. The guard glanced at the elevator bank and then at the wide-backed woman next to him, Evelyn Price, from her hair neat in a bob, rimless glasses catching the light. She folded her hands over a leather portfolio and did not smile. "We need you to come back up, Alex." "Evelyn, there's a legal hold and a few items to clarify." Her pen tapped twice on the portfolio like a small metronome. I tightened my fingers on the bag strap. My skin registered the room. Damp concrete under my shoes, the smell of old car leather, the faint coffee stain on my cuff. I had expected to leave. Instead, I was facing paperwork and faces that would not let the departure go. I pulled the messenger bag strap tighter and started to answer. But a man in a suit moved from the shadows near the stairwell. He carried himself like someone who expected doors to open when he walked toward them. Marcus Vale's profile showed before his voice did. A low, controlled sound when he said, "Mr. Mercer," a flash from his watch caught at his cufflink. Marcus's presence made the garage seem smaller. I remembered the glass conference room from a few nights earlier, Marcus standing with his hand on a folder that had my name on the tab. That image sat behind my ribs like an accusation. Evelyn put out a tablet and showed me an automated notice with my name. The text scrolled up in neat type. "Legal hold retention, pending review." The screen's cool glow made the black of the folder look heavier. I felt a brief cold anger. I had not planned a scene. I had planned to leave without a recorded exit interview because I did not want to be lectured or pressured. Now the company would not let me leave in private. We stepped into the glass elevator. The car smelled faintly of lemon, scented cleaner and warmed metal. The elevator hummed and rose. Outside, the parking lights receded into a wall of steel. Evelyn spoke in a controlled tone. "We need to follow procedure, Alex. Legal for a short conversation. It will take 15 minutes. Her fingers brushed the tablet screen and the notice pulsed. I watched my reflection in the glass. A man with a small scar above his right eyebrow, a worn leather bag, a silver band catching the elevator light. My jaw clenched. Suspicion had driven me into the building. Now it drove me to listen for what they had prepared. Inside the elevator I asked, "What is this about?" Evelyn tapped the tablet and said, "There's an internal review tied to a client loss. We have some unexplained decisions in the chain that we need to clarify." She the words as if allowed facts could settle them. I thought of the last client file I had closed. Numbers, emails, a late request from Marcus's office. I felt a shift from suspicion toward unease. My stomach tightened in time with the elevator's soft stop between floors. The elevator opened into the hair lobby. Soft carpet, a circulation of muted cream and teal in the light fixtures. Evelyn led me through a space laid out to feel calm and neutral. It felt rehearsed. A receptionist gave a tight nod. Behind the glass conference room, the broad silhouette of Marcus waited like a verdict. He did not move as we entered. His hands steepled in front of him, a measured pause between one gesture and the next. Seeing Marcus there narrowed the options on the table. I placed the folder on my shoulder and kept my other hand on the strap of my bag. Evelyn sat across from me at a long table. She opened the portfolio and set a stack of print outs on the table. Internal emails, time, stamped directives, a recent complaint. Her high cheekbones showed even in the dim light. "These are the items we need to discuss," she said. "We want to understand your role in the client decision chain." Her tone had a steady edge. I reached for the first sheet and felt the ink when I ran my thumb along the margin. The complaint had a name and a date. My chest shifted from unease towards something like guarded annoyance. Marcus entered the frame of the glass conference room and spoke without rising. "Alex, sit down." His voice had the calm precision of someone used to being obeyed. I sat. The table felt wide and hard under my palms. Marcus slid a sealed envelope across the glass and the envelope stopped at my name. "We can make this simple. Marcus, accept a confidential separation package." keep the record clean, sign and it's contained. He looked at me directly, steel, grey eyes narrowing. I could feel the offer as both a door and a trap. I put the envelope down and said, I didn't come to make a deal. My words landed with a short, deliberate flatness. Evelyn's pen moved, a small, careful action. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his measured pauses. I felt another emotion shift, from guarded annoyance into a quieter, sharper defiance. I thought of how decisions at Marcus's level had sent numbers on charts into freefall for a client. I remembered an internal directive I had seen a week before. One line in an email that had turned a recommendation into a mandate and sent my team to close a gap that wasn't ours to close. Evelyn slid a copy of an internal timeline across the table and tapped a point in the sequence. This is why legal flagged this. There's a chain of approvals that needs explanation. She looked at me and then at Marcus. The room's air felt tight with procedure. I inhaled and pulled a folded page from my messenger bag, a copied internal memo I had made weeks earlier and kept in case something like this surfaced. I pushed it across the table so it landed over the printed complaint. Marcus's eyes tracked the paper like a hawk. He inclined his head and said, "Where did you get that?" The question was short. My mouth found a line and I said, "From my archive." "It contradicts the timeline you presented." I did not try to soften the words. The memo showed direct instructions, an approval string that began in Marcus's office. Evelyn's fingers flattened on the page. The tension in the room climbed. For a moment there was only the sound of paper shifting and the hum of the building ventilation. Marcus folded his hands and steepled his fingers. "If that paper is true," he said, "then we have a problem beyond our—" His voice lost measure a fraction. Evelyn leaned forward. "I'll need to verify this. I'll forward it to legal now, and we'll place a formal hold on the matter." She tapped the tablet and the screen chirped. I watched their faces. Marcus's composure faltered in the way that happens when someone measures loss and needs to recalculate. Marcus's response was small and controlled. "We can handle it internally, Alex. Sign the separation, avoid a public review. You know how this looks for the client and for our board." The words hung between the agenda and the stakes. I felt the memory of earlier nights. My hands on a keyboard sending candid notes to a colleague. A terse directive from Marcus's office that made me sign off on a compromise. My voice came out even. "I can't sign away facts. I won't let the record be rewritten." The sentence was simple. Evelyn's mouth pressed into a line. The negotiation turned sharp. Marcus set a deadline for my answer. "We need a decision by midnight, Mr. Mercer. Cooperate and this stays quiet. Resist and we'll open a review." His voice carried the meaning. I looked up and met his gaze. "Marcus," I said, using his name to keep the exchange direct, "you don't get to frame the story after it happened. The memo shows who ordered what." Evelyn interjected with a moderator's cadence. "Alex, I'm not taking sides. I'm asking for facts. But if what you say checks out, we will have to escalate internally." Her hands smoothed the table surface in a slow, deliberate motion. I felt a shift again, this time toward a clarity that sharpened my choices. The room had been intended as a place for calm, but it had turned into a way in. Marcus's offer was safety. Sign and leave with money. Evelyn's role felt split between company duty and some private drive to know the truth. They both moved the plot with their decisions. I could walk out and take the money. I could refuse and risk a public review that would involve memos, legal staff, and months of internal hearings. My hand went to my pocket and found the copied memo's edge. The paper's presence made the decision physical. Evelyn pushed a printed reaction log toward me. "If you choose public review, Alex, it will draw attention to clients and the board. We need to be sure of the facts before we proceed." She folded her hands and watched me. Marcus's voice was low. "Think of your family. Think of your future. A lawsuit will drag names into the press. Private separation is a clean path." He steepled his fingers and held my gaze. The stakes were concrete, not abstract. Money, a public review, a client relationship, months of litigation. I thought of my son, the rent due next month, the small patch of wall at home where I had a framed photo that my son insisted on hanging crooked. I did the math in a few short breaths and felt the tug between obligation and principle. Outside, somewhere below us, a delivery truck reversed its beeping into the night. That external noise felt like a countdown. My choice would affect more than my record. It would influence the next month, the next year. I said, Evelyn, verify the memo. If it checks, forward it. If not, I'll sign nothing tonight. My voice had a contained firmness. Marcus's face showed a brief flash, exacting control returning. So that's your position, he said. Fine. We'll proceed as necessary. He rose and straightened his jacket. Marcus walked to the glass and touched the conference room wall as if he could steady the world on the other side. I watched him, measuring what his next move might cost me. Evelyn stood and gathered the documents. I'll make copies and notify legal. For now, please remain reachable. She closed the leather portfolio with a soft snap and placed it under her arm. My name once more, LX. I will verify the memo tonight and send everything to counsel. If what you say holds, we'll open an internal investigation. Her tone carried a promise tied to procedure rather than to alliance. I felt a flicker of gratitude and a new unease. Allied, but within a system that could still choose containment over truth. Marcus offered a final line as he prepared to leave the room. We can end this without spectacle, or we can let it be seen. Decide quickly. He left with 2 strides, his shoulders even. The door closed with an office click. The room's sound returned to small things. Pens on paper, a chair scraping carpet. Evelyn tapped her tablet and the email interface flashed a message being created. A security guard hovered by the doorway, the soft clack of his shoes on the floor a metronome to the afternoon's tension. I packed my bag slowly. Every motion was deliberate. Fold a page, tuck it under the leather strap, test the zipper, set my hand on the worn messenger leather. I felt the paper's weight in the bag like an anchored decision. Evelyn walked me to her corridor. As we passed the glass walls, I noticed the conference room where, a few nights earlier, Marcus had stood by a folder with my name on its tab. The memory reached into the present not as fog but as the exact image of 2 hands on a file. I let the recollection sit beside the new memo, and the 2 together made the stakes unavoidable. At hers corridor, Evelyn paused and said, I'll call you once I have confirmation. Expect an email within the hour. She adjusted the slim gold necklace at her throat. A small human gesture that made her feel less like procedure and more like a person making a choice. I nodded and walked past an office door left slightly open. The corridor's rim light fell across a strip of carpet, and the light touched the edge of the open door. For a breath I stopped and felt the quiet after-action of something that had been set into motion. The copied memo was in my pocket. The company had been told there was no problem. The printed complaint sat on the table. The decision to insist on truth now separated me from the possibility of a clean exit. I stepped through the open doorway to the building's main stairwell and paused at the threshold. A janitor pushed a cart and glanced up, a casual human interruption that broke the high-tension atmosphere. I left the room with my bag heavier and my face held steady. Evelyn's promise to verify the memo was the next event. Marcus's choice to make the separation offer public or private had set a deadline. The copied page in my pocket felt like a ticking hand. I pushed open the stairwell door and felt the cooler air press on my face. I should have left with my bag and a signed paper, but instead I carried a copy of a memo that could change how the company told its story. As I walked into the night, my phone buzzed once in my pocket. Evelyn's name. I did not answer. I kept walking until a block of amber streetlight crossed my path and the city noise reassembled into ordinary sound. I tucked my chin into my collar and headed home with the copied memo pressing against my thigh, its edges sharp like a choice I had finally made. The open door behind me glowed faintly in the corridor. It was a small physical fact I could picture later if needed. A door left ajar, a sliver of light that would not close itself. I had left the room but not the problem. I had traded a quiet exit for a chance that the truth would be told. The folder with my name had led me back inside. The copied memo had pushed me to stand instead of sign. Evelyn would verify. Marcus would decide whether to escalate or contain. I walked home thinking in concrete steps. Call my lawyer if Evelyn's verification confirmed the memo. Sit with my son the next morning and show him that I did not sign away the facts. Prepare for a week of interviews and legal notices if the company chose exposure. The decision was now set in motion by an action as simple and precise as my hand moving a sheet of paper across a table. I kept my phone silent. I felt the shift in the night like the soft click of a lock. The folder in my bag did not make me lighter, but it made my path clearer. In the corridor the door stayed ajar. I walked past it and into the stairwell. The buildings hum behind me, and the copy of the memo in my pocket to remind me what I would not let them erase. They closed the glass door behind me and Marcus. This ends tonight. Suspicion sat in my voice before I spoke again, because I had seen his hand hover over that folder once before. I kept my messenger bag at my feet and let my fingers curl around the worn leather strap. The room smelled of coffee and a faint polish the way the executive floor always did, but I had no patience for small talk. Evelyn set a leather portfolio on the table and folded her hands. "Alex," she said, "we were going to do the exit interview. You skipped." Her tone was steady. There was work in it. Marcus stood framed by the glass with the city lights behind him. He did not sit. The city lights made a thin rim of gold along his shoulders. I had planned to leave without a scene. Suspicion is why I had chosen silence as armor, and that suspicion shaped every step I took tonight. I could have signed a non-disclosure and walked away with a quiet severance. Instead, I had kept a copy of an email chain in the bottom pocket of my bag. I had a recording on my phone. I put both on the table now and pushed them toward Evelyn. Evelyn slid a card into her rimless glasses and read my name again. "You brought documents?" she asked. She did not ask with surprise. Because she had wanted those documents. "Yes," I said, "because this is not a resignation. This is a refusal to be complicit." My voice did not flare. I placed each paper on the table like evidence in a case. Marcus's jaw tightened. He walked around the table and slid a sealed folder in front of me. The leather made a soft sound against the wood. "This is our version," he said. "Sign this, and we will give you a settlement." The company moves on. He did not smile. He does not need to when he uses offers like shovels. I pushed the sealed folder back. "That isn't my story," I said, my hands folded together. I could feel my watch against my wrist. The suspicion in me had shifted into anger now, anger at the choice to bury problems and to make good people leave. I heard my own pulse in my ears and kept my voice low. Evelyn tapped a pen twice as she always does. "Marcus, Alex, let's take this step by step," she said. "Alex, tell me why you walked out without an exit interview." She did not look away. She did not let the question hang for dramatic effect. Because she wanted an answer. I answered in pieces. There were memos, 2 directives signed last quarter. They instructed us to withhold safety reports from the board until a review could be spun. I refused to rewrite them. I objected. Then they began reassigning the team that asked questions. I sent a memo up the chain asking for clarity. I received no reply. So I left. I named dates, times, recipients. I said names. Marcus's expression did not change when I said the names. He stood very still. "Those directives were project-level decisions," he said. "You can argue about phrasing. You can file a complaint. But walking out, that's dramatic." "Alex," his voice was cool. There was a low steadiness that tries to settle a room. Evelyn opened a page in her portfolio and slid a form toward me. "We will take a recorded statement," she said. "I will log your account and then we will assess next steps." She shifted her posture and folded the corner of a page with 2 fingers. "We need specifics. Dates, who changed language, who ordered reassignment." Her manner was composed but urgent. I reached into my messenger bag and set a phone on the table. I pressed play. Marcus did not flinch at the first seconds of a recorded directive. The voice on the recording was not mine. It was a senior leader directing a manager to hold off disclosure until legal completes its summary. The recording had time stamps. Marcus's mouth thinned. "Where did you get that?" he asked. His voice lost a fraction of its poise. For a moment the air held on that question. I could see the motion of his hand. He steepled his fingers and watched the clock over the city. I answered directly from a mailbox you had access to. A mistake in protocol left it open. I copied what I found. I did what I think a decent employee should do. I protected the people who raised concerns. My jaw tightened. I felt anger move into clarity. I was no longer protecting myself by silence. Marcus picked up his folder and tapped it once against the table. "Those are serious allegations, Alex. This is dangerous." He looked at Evelyn. "Legal, and I can contain this. We can offer." He paused. "A settlement, a non-disclosure. You walk away with enough to be quiet. Think about your options. Think about your family." There was calculation in his offer. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Marcus and then back to me. "Marcus," she said quietly, "containment without investigation isn't her job." She placed her pen down. "Alex, I will record your statement now. I will also open her review, but I need your help to make the record full. She put a hand flat on the table, palm down. The gesture anchored the moment. I signed to record. I read the emails aloud. I named the recipients, the time stamps, the exact phrasing the directive used. I described the team reassignment, who was moved, where they were placed. I described a meeting where a line manager told the team to ignore certain data points. Each line added weight. As I spoke, the room shifted from a staged settlement to a file being built. Marcus shifted his stance and asked for a recess. "Evelyn, step outside for a moment," he said. His tone carried an order. He did not say it loud. It did not need volume. He pointed to the glass wall and the corridor beyond. "We will speak privately." He laughed without sound and then turned away deliberately. Evelyn hesitated less than I expected. She closed her portfolio and stood. She paused at the glass, looked at the city, and then at Marcus. "Don't make me a shield for this," she said. The words were small, but her eyes were blunt. She walked out. Marcus watched her leave. He did not follow. He sat at the table and opened his folder. He spread out documents that had my name on the tabs. I recognized the handwriting on several pages, his assistant's notes, a human resources log with selective omissions. He smoothed a paper with the tip of a finger like someone proofing a strategy. I kept my hands visible. I eased my phone back into my palm and held the recording ready. I felt the second emotion shift, clarity leaning toward resolve. The room had been an attempt at containment. Now it was an admission waiting to be coaxed out or denied. I wanted what I had wanted when I first raised concerns. That the record matched the facts. Marcus lifted his eyes. "You left a team in chaos," he said. "We had to reassign work. People were worried." He named 2 managers by surname and said, "You forced our hand." His voice carried accusation now. The accusation turned my clarity into a hard refusal. "You forced their silence," I said. "You forced them into other roles so they couldn't continue asking questions. That's not protecting anyone, Marcus. That's burying a problem." The words landed on the table like a blunt instrument. Marcus's hands closed into fists for a second and then relaxed. He steepled his fingers and leaned forward. "Alex," he said, "if this goes public, the company will suffer. People will lose jobs. Your family will notice. Are you prepared for that?" The question was targeted. It implied consequences. His calm was a pressure. I looked at the city through the glass. I thought of my sister's mortgage, my nephew's braces, the note from payroll that had arrived that morning. I felt my resolve wobble against consequence. This was the third emotional shift, anger to doubt. I breathed and then answered plainly, "I understand the cost. I also understand the cost of looking away. I am not complicit. I will give my statement." My voice did not plead. It stated a decision. Marcus slammed a folder closed. The sound made the glass vibrate. He pushed a paper toward me with a headline draft pinned on top, an internal memo meant to shape the narrative. "Sign this, and we limit exposure," he said. He pointed to a clause about confidentiality and amicable separation. Evelyn returned then. She walked in with 2 men in suits I had not seen arrive earlier. The head of legal and a junior investigator from corporate compliance. She did not sit. She handed a recorder to the investigator and set a form in front of me. "We will document everything," she said. "Marcus, if you want to offer a settlement, do it transparently and record it in her minutes." Her voice left no flexibility. Marcus's face hardened. He leaned over the table and said, "Evelyn, that is unnecessary. This is a leadership matter." The room tightened. For the first time since I had met him, his control showed its edge. He was defending a method, not a person. Evelyn looked at him and then at the investigator. "We proceed by protocol," she said. "Alex will file a formal complaint and we will open a review. If anyone attempted to suppress reports, we will investigate." "That is she signed for emphasis and slid the form toward me. I filled the form. I wrote each detail I had said aloud again, this time in boxes and fields that would travel through systems. I watched Marcus watch me. He flinched when I named his assistant's role in redaction. He watched as my handwriting crossed names he preferred blurred. Marcus rose abruptly and walked to the floor, to ceiling window. He stared at the street lights. "Do you realize what you're redoing?" He asked softly. "You will break things at this company. People will lose their jobs. You think they won't blame the whistleblower?" His question was precise. It attempted to shift blame onto me. The investigator tapped the recorder. "Marcus, anything you say will be part of the record. he said. The sentence was a warning in plain clothes. The recorder glowed a tiny red light. Marcus turned and said, "I will not provide a confession in her." He took a breath and then moved closer to the table. "But I will propose an agreement. Confidential settlement, no publicity. You walk away with compensation. We'll keep the internal review limited to the project team and resolve this quietly." He spoke as if presenting options at a negotiation table. Evelyn's hand hovered over a page. "Marcus," she said, "quiet resolutions without accountability are not a policy. We document misconduct. If there is wrongdoing at senior levels, we escalate. Full stop." The words were procedural and final. Marcus's voice became low, and the conversation shifted into rapid exchange. "Evelyn, you will ruin us," he said. "Marcus, you will ruin people if you hide this," she answered. "Alex, sign and accept." Marcus, looking at me, "I will not sign to hide the facts," I said. "So you want a public fight?" "Marcus, I want the truth on paper," I said sharply. "I want the review to be real and not an exercise in optics." My line was short. The room held on the syllables. The back and forth lasted 6 lines. It was fast and hot. The tension in the room rose until the investigator leaned forward and said, "Everyone, one at a time." "Marcus, state your account for the record." His voice cut the argument. Marcus looked at Evelyn and then at me. He breathed. Then he began to talk in a quiet, deliberate voice about project timelines and market risk. He used phrases like business judgment and strategic delay. He did not use the word that would appear later in the minutes. "Cover up." At point mid-sentence, "Marcus, we chose not to escalate because we feared market reaction." The phrase landed awkwardly. Evelyn's pen paused over the form. I felt the room tilt as that admission hung between us. The mid-chapter cliffhanger occurred then. Marcus named a motive that tied senior leadership directly to suppression. Evelyn's face did not move. She set her pen down and asked, "Who approved that decision?" The question was small, but it demanded a name. Marcus looked at the window and then at the floor. "I signed it with counsel's agreement." Marcus slowly, "It was me." His voice was measured, and the room absorbed the weight of his admission. The word "me" cut through the negotiation like a file opened. The investigator's recorder clicked as it marked the sentence. The admission brought a new distance between us. My suspicion shifted into something like vindication and then unease. The fourth emotional change was relief edged by dread. Vindication meant consequences. The silence in the room lasted only a heartbeat before Marcus's face tightened into strategy again. Marcus pushed back. "I made a judgment call based on company risk. It was tactical, not criminal." He looked at Evelyn and said, "Contain this. Limit the exposure. That is the only way to protect the company and the people dependent on it." He kept trying to reframe the admission as necessity. Evelyn closed the portfolio and stood up. She flipped the form and wrote a single line across the top. "Open her review requested by Har Director, Evelyn Price." She slid the paper toward the investigator and said, "We will not be contained." The words were quiet and efficient. Marcus leaned over the table and said, "Evelyn, this is destabilizing. We can resolve this quietly. Think about the jobs, the contractors, the people who will be laid off if this goes out." He used specifics, vendor names, project budgets, percentages. He aimed at pressure points. Evelyn looked at him and then at me. "I will document everything," she said. "If there was a deliberate effort to suppress essential information, we will record that. If legal needs to be involved, then legal will be involved." She closed her notebook again and looked directly at Marcus. "We follow policy. No cover-ups. No spin." Her set of choices made the smell of business certainty in the room sharper. Marcus collected his papers and walked to the door. He stopped and said, "If you want to escalate, Alex, be prepared. You will hear near constant pressure. You will be second-guessed. You will be asked why you didn't speak sooner." He turned and left the room. His footsteps were heavy on the carpet. When he left, Evelyn sat back down. She pushed the investigator's recorder toward me and said, "Do you want to add anything?" Her hands folded on the table. The air felt like a held breath between the windows and the city. I added details. The exact email header names, the date the directive changed, the manager's response when he was moved. I named the team members who had been reassigned and the tasks that had been lost. I described the moment in the prior week when a junior analyst told me she had been asked to throw away a subreport. Each concrete detail made a path through abstract accusation. The investigator asked follow-up questions. He for copies and for times I had spoken to counsel. He if I had copied anyone outside the company. I answered, I gave him the recordings. I handed the investigator a USP with the email headers. He tapped his tablet and typed notes. Each click sounded like a small mechanism setting into motion. Evelyn signed the form and then walked to the glass to look out at the skyline. I'll open the review file in the next hour. I'll assign an investigator and legal will be notified. We will protect employees who come forward. If anyone tries to retaliate, we will record that too. Her words were a promise in procedural language. I felt a release that was not full relief. The fifth emotional shift was from dread to cautious hope. The facts had found a path to be documented. That pathway did not guarantee justice. It only guaranteed that there would be a paper trail now. Evelyn stood and handed me a sealed envelope marked her to copies. Keep this. If you need counsel, take it. We'll have security escort you to your car if you prefer. Her offer was practical. She had always been practical. Outside the conference room, the corridor lights were soft and a security guard waited by the elevator. He had been there in Chapter 2. I recognized the way he held his keys and how he avoided looking at me directly. He had been the one who pressed his palm to my forearm earlier in the week when someone waited for me. Now he nodded once. I pushed the conference room door open halfway and left it ajar before stepping into the corridor. The light from the room spilled out. I could hear the investigator finish his notes. Evelyn's voice carried beyond glass. We document, we escalate, we protect witnesses. Marcus's footsteps faded. I took the envelope from her and put it inside my bag. My hands were steadier than when I had walked in. The final action was not a monologue or a promise. It was a physical choice to leave the room with the record intact. I stepped into the corridor and the door clicked softly behind me. The door remained slightly ajar when I walked away, the glass blurring his shape and mine for a moment, and the investigator's recorder still glowed its tiny red light inside the room.